There's been an issue, obviously, with COVID in China. They are reopening now. They have some level of infection. But you also have some dealings there, particularly with Paxlovid. Where do you stand with Paxlovid and China right now?
Right now, the authorities, they would like to get as much as they can, and we are sending them Paxlovid. We have shipped the last 1 month a few millions of doses that they are distributed immediately in all channels in China, and they are making a very big difference.
Is there any move from China to go to mRNA vaccine? Not the Paxlovid treatment, but the vaccine?
I don't know. I think, and I have heard that they do have some companies that they are doing their own local mRNA versions, but I don't have more information about it.
So obviously you've been enormously successful, you with BioNTech, in the vaccine. And thank you, by the way, as somebody who's received it.
Thank you for saying that.
What comes next? On vaccine specifically for COVID. What about variations, for some of the variations we're seeing coming out? Are you developing those, and where are you in that process?
Every time there's a variation, we have a standard process that we isolate the virus. We try to see if the variant escapes the protection for a vaccine. If we have suspicion that it might, we start working like if we are going to make a vaccine. Many of these variants disappear, so they are not an issue anyway. But if some start growing, then we are not losing time because we have already prepared those steps.
And you haven't found one yet to get around the vaccine?
Always we find and we discuss the data with authorities, but the ones that will make this decision is not Pfizer or Moderna or any manufacturer. It is CDC and FDA, it is the European authorities, it is the Israeli authorities, it is the health authorities of any country that will ask, based on the data, we want you to make this vaccine as a new
What about
variation.
the duration of the vaccine? I mean, I've gotten, I think, 2 or 3 boosters now after the initial vaccine.
Yeah.
It lasts a while. Are we going to have to get it every year, or are you developing something that might actually last longer?
Yeah, it doesn't last the current ones, and also doesn't last the disease. For example, if you get disease, you can get disease again after 3 months. With the same even variant, not even absent a change of the variant. That's why it's very difficult for this virus to eradicate. I don't think it will. But we are working to see if we can get an annual vaccine. An annual vaccine will be ideal because people will remember, they can do it with other vaccinations like flu, and can last.
Okay, flu, you raised it.
Yeah.
Where are you in developing? Because I think that's what you were originally doing with BioNTech. You were developing mRNA for flu. Where are you on a flu vaccine based on mRNA?
Oh, the studies are running. They have completely recruited. We are waiting for cases as they accumulate. Means that people have been vaccinated, placebo, vaccine, and then the disease, some of them will get disease, and then we are waiting to unblind the data to see what is coming. I think will come in this year, in 23.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, you can't guarantee a timeline depending on the clinical trials.
No, but
your best guess, what would you think?
I think by the first half of the year, maybe.
First half of the year?
Yeah, June, July.
Wow. And so how far are we away from one vaccine that's both COVID and flu together?
First, we need to have a flu. And if we have a flu, already we started experiments to combine the two so that we don't lose time again. I think we'll come more or less all together if it is successful.
So you've been very successful with the COVID vaccine, and it, I think, has returned a fair amount to your top line and your bottom line. But what about the rest of your business? How are you developing other pharmaceuticals actually come and take up some of that?
Thank you for asking, because indeed this is the most pivotal year for Pfizer. Starting this month and for the next 18 months, we are launching 19 new medical products. 19. There was never a company in the pharmaceutical company, and us, of course, that we undertook such an operation, 19 different products in 18 months. They cover vaccines, 5, 2 new medicines for cancer, 1 for lymphoma, the other for prostate cancer, 2 for metabolic diseases. So it's a very broad range of products, and we are going to be very, very busy the next 18 months.
Very busy. As you say, it's critical. When will you have a sense of how those do?
You know, when you launch a product, typically there's a very high correlation in the first 12 months how that will do for the entire year. In the 6 months, also very strong correlation. So usually in the 6 months, you get a good feeling when things are moving.
So one of the issues with the COVID vaccine has been some of the developing countries. Some countries have been left behind. By the way, it's not limited to pharmaceuticals, not limited to COVID. There's a problem in general about that in the world. But specifically when it comes to what you're doing, I know you have something called the Accord. Tell us about that.
I will tell you the Accord, but also just to clarify, for the vaccines, particularly our vaccine, all countries in the world were offered completely free through a brave move that the government made, the US government. They bought 1 billion doses from us at cost, and they offered it for free to the world. Unfortunately, they were not able to absorb it because there is no demand for those vaccines, unfortunately, in the poorest of the countries. But nevertheless, that gave us the whole story with COVID, sensitized even more. So 9 months ago, here in Davos, we launched an accord where we said that Pfizer will offer all the patent-protected products, which means the products that the generic manufacturers cannot make cheap copies, at cost. And we say at cost is manufacture and send. No regulatory, no compliance, no legal, no administrative, no research. To 1.2 billion people living in the 45 poorest countries of the world. That happened 9 months ago, and already by the end of the year we had sending products to some of these countries. What we did yesterday was even more historic move. We announced not all our patent protected, but all our products. This moves the list from 23 products to over 500.
Wow, so it's not just the ones patent protected, it's
everything
all of your
else.
products.
Because we were hearing when we were giving, for example, would give them maybe the most prescribed breast cancer medicine in the world, high technology, but they would say we have also needs for antibiotics, we have needs for antiparasitics, we have needs for anesthetics or basic chemotherapy, and we heard them and then we did everything.
I must say, that sounds wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Why did you do it?
Because we ought to do it. I don't think there is no reason why the poorest countries in the world right now won't have access to the same medicines that kids in America or in France are having.
One of the reasons I think Pfizer has been as successful as it has been is because there's been investment in science, basically. What about larger, for the US government and other governments, are we investing enough in basic R&D? Could that help you?
I think it would help, and I think there is a lot of work happening, particularly in the US, and this is why in the US has attracted all the research investments of the private sector. If you see what is going on, even companies that are European companies are doing most of their research in the US because this is where things are happening. I think it is the crown jewel of the US industry, the life sciences.
You know healthcare so terribly well, Dr. Bourla. Let me ask you what you think the biggest challenge is. Is it actually having the drugs, the pharmaceuticals to administer, or is it actually the infrastructure to get it delivered? You mentioned earlier that you actually couldn't get some of the COVID vaccines in some countries that needed it.
No, there is no doubt in Africa, it is not the availability of the products. Of course, you need to have them and you need to have them in prices that you can pay. But once you resolve that, which we just did, you are going to have very big problems with infrastructure. You don't have the right healthcare professionals to administer, to make the diagnosis. This is where we should help. This is where we should help, us included, but also the US government through US aid, other organizations that they aim to improve health and improve the health inequities. This is where we should focus our attention now. WHO.
It's a very
is doing a fantastic job, WHO. This is where we should all partner together.